In terms of, Chauke being at the center of allegations across a number of years, that he was a gatekeeper, that he weaponized the NPA insofar as the politically powerful and corrupt were concerned.
The moment General Nandami stepped up to the microphone, something in the room shifted. You could almost feel the tension stretch across the hall, like everyone sensed that this wasn't going to be a routine statement. He didn't speak like someone addressing his superior. He spoke like a man who had carried a truth for too long and finally decided he wasn't going to hold it back anymore. When he looked directly at President Ramaphosa and said, "Mr. President, enough of the speeches and enough of the spin. South Africans deserve the truth." It was as if the entire hall froze. No one expected that level of boldness on live national TV, not from a general, not in front of millions.
And to stall the prosecution of Richard Mdluli, and then to instead have him prosecuted for have been some of the long-standing issues or the cases that have been known about for quite some time.
His words didn't come out shaky or uncertain. They hit with the weight of someone who had seen things from the inside and couldn't pretend anymore. He accused the president of telling what he called the greatest lie ever told to South Africans. And that alone would have been explosive. But he didn't stop there. He went straight for one of the most sensitive areas in government, the security budget. According to him, funds meant to protect citizens were quietly diverted into shadow accounts, placed under the control of private contractors tied to senior ANC insiders.
Shut up, you stay nation and listen. You look around the world. I want you to shut up. I really do want you to shut up.
It was the kind of allegation that could end a career, shake a political party, or even trigger a national investigation. You could see Ramaphosa's face shift from confusion to disbelief and then to anger, all within seconds. He wasn't ready for this confrontation, especially not with cameras broadcasting every expression, every reaction. Nandami didn't flinch. He didn't soften his tone. He stood there, live on air, making accusations that most people would only dare whisper behind closed doors. The room erupted the moment Nandami laid out the details. This wasn't vague political talk or empty speculation. He claimed that the money, the very money allocated for security and national safety, never reached the departments it was meant for, not a cent. Instead, Nandami said the funds were quietly rerouted into accounts that had nothing to do with public projects. As he spoke, you could feel everyone in the hall realizing that this wasn't just political drama. This was a potential national scandal unfolding in real time. He didn't stop at the missing money. He went further, saying the government issued fabricated progress reports to cover up the disappearance of the funds. Reports that claimed successful development, new infrastructure, improved security readiness, all fake. According to him, the documentation had been falsified to keep the public calm while millions vanished behind the scenes. These weren't accusations you could brush aside. These were accusations that pointed directly at corruption, deception, and high-level manipulation. And then came the moment that sent the hall into pure chaos. Nandami opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder, thick with papers. He said these were the documents, the evidence, showing falsified progress, secret transfers, and the president's signature approving questionable financial movements. The instant he raised that folder, the press went wild. Journalists fired questions from every corner, officials stumbled trying to contain the situation, and Ramaphosa's team rushed toward the podium as if trying to stop the broadcast. But it was too late. Every second was already streaming across the country. Every gasp, every glance, every flicker of panic was captured live. Ramaphosa tried to regain control, calling the allegations baseless, warning Nandami about protocol, but the damage was done. The general had unleashed a political earthquake, and everyone watching knew it. When General Nandami dropped those accusations, you could actually see the moment President Ramaphosa's expression changed. At first, he looked stunned, like he couldn't believe someone had the nerve to confront him so directly on live national television. His eyes widened slightly, and for a few seconds, he didn't even move. It was the type of silence that speaks louder than words, the kind that tells you someone just got hit with something they never expected.
Where the president is emphasizing the fact that those allegations may have impact to the security of the country, and therefore he will attend to these reports.
But that shock didn't last long. Almost instantly, Ramaphosa snapped into defense mode. His calm presidential tone disappeared, replaced by irritation and forcefulness. He called the allegations baseless, reckless, and a violation of protocol. He accused the general of spreading rumors and misleading the public, insisting that national television was not the place for such unfounded claims. His voice was sharper, his gestures more rushed, and it was clear he was trying to regain control before the situation spiraled even further. Meanwhile, his aides were scrambling behind him. You could see them exchanging panicked looks, whispering urgently, signaling to the media team, and trying to figure out how to stop the broadcast. Some staff members even stepped closer to the podium, as if they were waiting for the right moment to intervene. They knew the cameras were rolling, capturing every reaction, every denied claim, and every word that might become a political firestorm within minutes. But the truth is, it was already too late. The confrontation was live. Millions of people across South Africa were glued to their screens, watching the president and the general face off in a way the country had never seen before. No one could cut the feed fast enough. Every second of hesitation, every defensive statement, every sign of panic was already out in the world. Just when everyone thought the confrontation couldn't get any more explosive, General Nandami reached into his briefcase, and the entire room shifted again. He pulled out a thick folder, the kind stuffed with documents nobody wants to see exposed, and when he raised it above his head, you could practically hear the gasp ripple across the hall. He claimed the folder contained proof, secret transfers, forged project reports, and authorizations signed off by the president himself. In South Africa's political world, that wasn't just evidence, that was dynamite. The moment he held it up on live TV became one of those historic freeze-frame moments. Millions of people watching from home immediately leaned forward. Phones went up. Screenshots flew across social media within seconds. People didn't even know what the documents said yet, but the image alone was enough to set the country on fire. The general standing firm, arm raised, folder in hand. It looked like the beginning of a political revolution. Journalists in the room exploded into motion. They shouted questions over each other, trying to get closer, trying to capture clearer shots, trying to understand exactly what was happening. Officials around Ramaphosa panicked even more. Some moved toward Nandami as if they wanted to physically block the camera view, while others signaled frantic instructions to the broadcast team. But the broadcast was live. Every second was being recorded, replayed, clipped, and shared across the internet.
Manner who were involved in specific crime fighting there, and to stall the prosecution of Richard Mdluli, and then to instead have him prosecuted for have been some of the long-standing issues or the cases that have been known about for quite some time.
Within minutes, hashtags like #Ramaphosa exposed, Nandami Truth, and Firestorm flooded Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Clips of the confrontation spread faster than anyone in that room could react. Even international outlets picked up the story before the press briefing had officially ended. People weren't just watching the event, they were analyzing the general's tone, Ramaphosa's expression, the reactions of aides, the thickness of the folder, the color of the papers, everything. The confrontation had gone from a government briefing to a national spectacle and then to a viral political crisis in under 10 minutes. The moment the confrontation hit national TV, South Africans didn't just watch it, they exploded online. Within minutes, social media felt like it was on fire. People couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. A high-ranking general calling out the president face-to-face, exposing him live, and refusing to back down no matter how tense the room became. Viewers started calling it the realest moment ever seen on national television, saying it was the first time someone had spoken so boldly without fear, hesitation, or political filters. Timeline after timeline filled with clips of Nandami holding up that folder. Some users slowed the video down frame by frame, trying to catch any glimpse of what was written on the documents. Others shared memes, reactions, and shock-filled comments. It felt like the entire country paused for a second, united in disbelief as they watched the drama unfold in real time. Supporters of the general began praising him as a hero, calling him the voice the country had been waiting for. They said he did what countless officials failed to do, challenge power openly and demand accountability. Hashtags like #Nandami Truth, #Expose on Everything, and #Real Leadership spread almost as quickly as the original video. People thanked him for speaking up, for being brave, and for refusing to let the moment slip into polite political silence. But not everyone was cheering. Critics accused him of being reckless, impulsive, and disrespectful to the highest office in the land. Some said he had crossed a dangerous line by confronting the president publicly, especially on live television. They questioned his timing, his motives, and even whether he was being used by internal ANC factions to weaken Ramaphosa.
President to engage the stakeholders, and also I was told that he will be able to speak to us tomorrow before he leaves for South Africa, and therefore during that interaction we'll be able to ask the president some questions around this issue. And I think much as he might not divulge all the information.
Even before the press briefing officially ended, political analysts across South Africa were already calling this moment one of the most explosive allegations in modern democratic history. They weren't exaggerating. A general accusing a sitting president of manipulating security funds, diverting money, forging reports, and approving secret transfers, all in front of cameras, was a level of political confrontation the country had rarely seen. Analysts described it as a potential political earthquake, one powerful enough to shake institutions, fracture alliances, and even redefine leadership structures within the ANC. Many experts compared the accusations to past scandals: state capture under Zuma, the arms deal controversy, and various corruption inquiries that had dragged the ANC into years of internal chaos. But something about this confrontation felt different. It was raw, public, and completely unfiltered. There were no leaks, no anonymous sources, no delayed investigations. It happened right there, live, leaving no room for controlled narratives. What worried analysts most was the timing. South Africa has been struggling with economic challenges, public frustration, power failures, rising crime, and political fatigue. Trust in leadership is already fragile. A scandal this big, if proven true, could trigger a full-scale crisis of confidence. Some analysts warned that depending on what evidence Nandami releases, this confrontation could become the defining moment of Ramaphosa's presidency, and possibly the moment that ends it. Others pointed out the deeper implications. If the accusations are accurate, it wouldn't just tarnish the president's reputation. It could expose corruption networks inside the government, reveal hidden beneficiaries, and drag multiple high-ranking officials into legal scrutiny. It might also intensify divisions within the ANC itself, fueling battles between factions already fighting for influence. Several commentators predicted that South Africa could be heading toward one of its most significant political investigations since the Zondo Commission. And the scary part? Nobody knows how far the fallout could spread. The moment the broadcast ended, it became obvious that Ramaphosa's team was scrambling behind the scenes. Within an hour, every public appearance on the president's schedule was canceled. No walkabouts, no press briefings, not even pre-planned meetings. It was the kind of sudden silence that tells you something inside the union buildings had gone horribly off script. Instead of facing the media, the presidency released a short, vague statement calling the confrontation an unfortunate misunderstanding, trying to downplay what millions had just watched with their own eyes. The statement didn't address the accusations, didn't mention the folder, and didn't clarify anything. It was the type of message designed to calm a storm, but it only made people more suspicious. Behind closed doors, insiders reported that the atmosphere inside ANC leadership circles was tense and chaotic. Some officials were demanding an immediate disciplinary hearing for Nandami, insisting he had embarrassed the president and violated military protocol. Others, however, were quietly saying the party needed to take the allegations seriously before defending Ramaphosa. The fact that even senior party members couldn't agree on how to respond showed just how shaken the leadership had become. According to sources, multiple emergency meetings were held that same evening. Advisors were reportedly divided. One group urged Ramaphosa to address the nation immediately and deny everything, while another group warned him that confronting the issue too quickly could backfire if Nandami actually had the evidence he claimed. The internal panic became even more obvious when several ANC figures were seen avoiding the press entirely, refusing to answer questions or even offer neutral comments. You could feel the political pressure building by the hour. The presidency wanted to contain the damage, but the problem was far bigger than controlling a press statement. It was about credibility. If the president appeared too defensive, it would look like guilt. If he stayed silent, people would assume he was hiding something. Either way, the leadership found itself trapped between public distrust and internal division. While the nation was still replaying the confrontation online, another story began unfolding behind the scenes, one far more personal and far more dangerous for General Nandami. Reports emerged that shortly after the broadcast, he started receiving multiple threats. Some were anonymous calls. Others were messages warning him to stay quiet or face consequences. It didn't take long for intelligence officials to realize he was now a high-risk target. Whether those threats came from political enemies, corrupt networks, or factions trying to protect their own interests, no one could say for sure. But one thing was obvious. The general's life had just changed dramatically. In response to the rising danger, security around him was increased immediately. His movements became restricted, his protection detail was strengthened, and even his communication access was monitored more carefully. People who knew him said he remained calm, but everyone around him understood the seriousness of the situation. You don't accuse a sitting president of corruption on national television and expect the aftermath to be gentle. What made things even more complicated was the reaction inside the ANC itself. Some leaders quietly admired his courage, saying he did what many were too afraid to do. These individuals believed the party needed cleansing and transparency, even if it meant confronting painful truths. But others were furious. They accused him of humiliating the president, damaging the party's image, and creating unnecessary instability. A few even demanded his suspension for going against protocol and exposing internal matters publicly. This split inside the ANC only increased the pressure on him. Supporters wanted him protected and heard. Opponents wanted him silenced or punished. And with the public demanding evidence, the general found himself at the center of one of the biggest political storms South Africa had seen in years. As the clip of the confrontation spread across South Africa, the country found itself divided in a way that revealed just how fragile the political climate had become. On one side, millions of people cheered for General Nandami, calling him a hero who finally said what so many ordinary citizens had been whispering for years. These supporters saw him as a man who put his career on the line to expose corruption they believed had eaten away at the country's stability. For them, his boldness felt like a breath of fresh air in a political system where honesty often seemed impossible. They celebrated him for speaking plainly, confronting power directly, and refusing to hide behind formal language or scripted statements. But on the other side, an equally loud group accused him of being irresponsible and reckless. They argued that his actions destabilized the government, embarrassed the presidency, and put the nation's international reputation at risk. Some believed he was being used by political factions within the ANC to weaken Ramaphosa and fuel internal power struggles. To them, his dramatic public exposure wasn't bravery, it was betrayal. They insisted that a general should never challenge the president publicly, no matter the issue, because national security depends on order and protocol. What made this moment so powerful is that it didn't just divide people based on political loyalty. It exposed deeper frustrations that had been simmering for years. South Africans have lived through corruption scandals, broken promises, unstable leadership, and endless inquiries that never seemed to deliver real change. The confrontation hit a nerve because it forced people to confront the uncomfortable truth that their trust in government was already fragile. Within hours of the broadcast, South Africa's political landscape shifted. Activists, opposition parties, civil society groups, and even some ANC members began calling for a full parliamentary investigation into the allegations. The demand wasn't soft or cautiously worded. It was loud, urgent, and immediate. People wanted answers, and they wanted them through a process that couldn't be brushed aside by a short presidential statement or internal party discussions. Outside Parliament, protesters gathered with signs calling for transparency and justice. Some people held posters with Nandami's image, labeling him a whistleblower standing up for the people. Others carried messages demanding accountability for every cent of public money. The tone of the protests made one thing clear. This scandal wasn't just about politics, it was about trust. Trust that had been weakening for years and finally snapped the moment the folder appeared on live television. Opposition leaders quickly seized the moment, arguing that the allegations were too serious to ignore. They pressured Parliament to open hearings, issue subpoenas, and require both the president and the general to testify. Their message was simple: if the president is innocent, transparency will protect him. If he isn't, the country needs to know. Even analysts, who normally take a cautious approach, admitted that a proper investigation was necessary. They warned that ignoring the issue would only deepen public distrust. And with social media acting like a national megaphone, the pressure on Parliament grew heavier by the minute. Many citizens expressed that this wasn't only about Ramaphosa or Nandami. It was about years of watching corruption cases come and go without meaningful consequences. This confrontation became a symbol of something much bigger, a breaking point for a nation tired of half-truths and political games. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.